In the deepest recesses of your mind lives a character you've been unconsciously writing for decades. This character is not fictional, it's the most real person in your universe because it determines everything you'll ever achieve, every relationship you'll ever form, every opportunity you'll ever recognize or miss. This character is your self-image, and right now, at this very moment, it's either the hero of your success story or the architect of your limitations. Most people never realize they're living inside a story they wrote about themselves when they were too young to understand the power of the pen they were holding. They created a character based on other people's opinions, childhood experiences, past failures, and random moments of pain or praise. Then they spent their entire lives trying to prove that character right, defending that identity, living up or down to expectations they set before they even knew what they were capable of becoming. But here's the revolutionary truth that changes everything. You are not stuck with the character you created. You are not bound by the story you've been telling yourself. You are not limited by the self-image you inherited from your past. You are the author, the editor, and the director of your own life story, and you can rewrite the main character anytime you choose. Your self-image is not your identity, it's your programming. And like all programming, it can be updated, upgraded, and completely rewritten when it no longer serves the life you want to create. Napoleon Hill understood this principle when he spent decades studying the most successful individuals of his era. What he discovered was profound. The difference between those who achieve greatness and those who settle for mediocrity isn't talent, luck, or circumstances. It's the story they tell themselves about who they are and what they're capable of achieving. The wealthy see themselves as wealth creators. The successful see themselves as success magnets. The powerful see themselves as natural leaders. Not because they were born that way, but because they consciously crafted that self-image and then lived into it until it became their reality. Right now, your self-image is working like a powerful operating system, running in the background of your consciousness, determining what you notice, what you attempt, what you believe is possible, and what you unconsciously sabotage. It's the invisible force that makes you comfortable with certain levels of success and uncomfortable with others. Confident in some areas and insecure in others, bold in particular situations and timid in the rest. Your self-image is your thermostat. Just like a thermostat regulates temperature, your self-image regulates your life results. When your external results rise above your internal self-image, you unconsciously act to bring them back down. When your achievements exceed what you believe you deserve, you find ways to sabotage your success. When your reality surpasses your self-concept, you create problems to restore the familiar equilibrium of limitation. This is why lottery winners often lose their fortunes. Why successful people sometimes destroy their own success. Why individuals who achieve beyond their self-image feel uncomfortable and create chaos to return to their comfort zone. It's not that they don't want success, it's that success feels foreign to the character they believe themselves to be. But the opposite is equally true and infinitely more powerful. When you expand your self-image, your external reality expands to match it. When you see yourself as capable of greater things, you become capable of greater things. When you rewrite your character as someone who naturally attracts success, you begin naturally attracting success. Consider the transformation of a young man named Harlan Sanders, who at 65 years old was living on Social Security checks and had failed at dozens of ventures. By every external measure, he was a failure. But Sanders refused to accept that external story as his internal identity. He saw himself not as a failure, but as someone who simply hadn't found the right opportunity yet. That shift in self-image from failed entrepreneur to undiscovered success story changed everything. Sanders took his chicken recipe and began approaching restaurants with a vision that matched his new self-concept. He was rejected over 1,000 times. But each rejection couldn't penetrate his armor of self-belief because he had rewritten his character from someone who fails to someone who persists until success becomes inevitable. The Colonel Sanders story isn't about chicken recipes, it's about the power of self-image transformation. The moment he changed how he saw himself, he changed what was possible for himself. The moment he upgraded his internal programming, his external results upgraded to match. Your self-image operates through a simple but powerful mechanism you cannot consistently perform in a way that contradicts how you see yourself. If you see yourself as unsuccessful, you'll find ways to fail even when success is handed to you. If you see yourself as unlucky, you'll miss opportunities that others recognize immediately. If you see yourself as limited, you'll discover limitations everywhere you look. But if you see yourself as naturally successful, you'll find ways to succeed even in challenging circumstances. If you see yourself as fortunate, you'll notice opportunities that others overlook. If you see yourself as capable of greatness, you'll develop capabilities that others believe are impossible. This isn't positive thinking. This is practical psychology. Your self-image determines your comfort zone, and your comfort zone determines your results. Expand your self-image, and you automatically expand your comfort zone. Expand your comfort zone, and you automatically expand your results. Walt Disney understood this principle when he transformed from a failed newspaper editor into an entertainment visionary. Disney didn't change his circumstances first, he changed his self-image first. Instead of seeing himself as someone who had failed at his previous job, he began seeing himself as an innovative storyteller who was destined to revolutionize entertainment. That shift in self-perception preceded every breakthrough that followed. Disneyland wasn't built by someone who saw himself as a failure. It was created by someone who had rewritten his character as a master of imagination and innovation. The external empire followed the internal transformation. Most people try to change their results without changing their self-image, and then wonder why the results don't stick. They attempt to lose weight while still seeing themselves as overweight. They try to make money while still identifying as financially struggling. They work to build relationships while still believing they're not worthy of love. This approach is like trying to change your reflection without changing yourself. The mirror of reality will always reflect back your internal self-image, regardless of how much effort you put into manipulating the external world. Real change begins with internal transformation. It starts with looking honestly at the character you've been playing and asking whether that character is capable of creating the life you actually want. If the answer is no, then the character needs to be rewritten, not the circumstances. Your current self-image was created through repetition, repetitive thoughts, repetitive experiences, repetitive feedback from others. It became solid through consistency and reinforcement. But what was created through repetition can be recreated through new repetition. What was programmed through one set of experiences can be reprogrammed through a different set of experiences. Abraham Lincoln demonstrated this principle when he transformed from a poor farm boy with minimal education into one of the most influential leaders in human history. Lincoln didn't wait for his circumstances to change before he changed his self-image. He changed his self-image and then used that new identity to change his circumstances. While others saw limitations in his background, Lincoln saw preparation for greatness. While they saw obstacles in his lack of formal education, he saw opportunities for self-directed learning. While they saw his humble origins as disqualifications for leadership, he saw them as qualifications for understanding the common person. Lincoln's greatness didn't emerge from his circumstances, it emerged from his refusal to be limited by those circumstances. He wrote himself a new character, one capable of extraordinary achievement, and then lived into that character until it became his reality. The process of rewriting your self-image begins with clarity about who you want to become. You cannot navigate toward a destination you haven't clearly defined. You cannot become someone you haven't specifically envisioned. You cannot live up to standards you haven't consciously established. Most people have vivid images of their current limitations, but vague ideas about their future potential. They can describe their problems in detail, but only speak generally about their possibilities. They have high-definition pictures of their failures, but blurry concepts of their success. This imbalance creates confused programming. Your mind cannot create what it cannot clearly conceive. Unclear self-images produce unclear results. Vague identities generate vague achievements. Fuzzy self-concepts create fuzzy realities. You must develop the same clarity about your desired self-image that you currently have about your limitations. If you can clearly see yourself as struggling, you can clearly see yourself as succeeding. If you can vividly imagine yourself failing, you can vividly imagine yourself achieving. If you can detail your weaknesses, you can detail your strengths. Henry Ford transformed from a simple farm mechanic into an industrial revolutionary by first transforming his self-image from someone who fixed machines to someone who reimagined entire industries. Ford didn't gradually evolve into this identity, he consciously chose it, deliberately cultivated it, and persistently lived into it. Ford's vision of mass-produced automobiles wasn't just a business idea, it was the natural expression of his new self-image as someone who makes the impossible inevitable. The assembly line, the Model T, the transformation of transportation. These were all external manifestations of internal identity transformation. But transformation requires more than just visualization, it demands embodiment. You must not only see your new self-image, you must feel it, think from it, act through it, and live as if it's already true. Intellectual understanding without emotional integration creates weak programming that collapses under pressure. Your new self-image must be emotionally charged, not just mentally conceived. Emotion is the energy that transforms thoughts into things, ideas into realities, possibilities into actualities. Without emotional involvement, your new self-image remains a pleasant fantasy rather than a powerful force for transformation. When Thomas Edison saw himself as the world's greatest inventor, he didn't just think that thought, he felt the excitement of discovery, the satisfaction of contribution, the joy of breakthrough. His emotional connection to his self-image was so intense that failure became impossible because failure contradicted who he knew himself to be. Edison's famous statement about not failing but finding 10,000 ways that don't work wasn't optimistic reframing. It was the natural perspective of someone whose self-image as a successful inventor was stronger than any temporary setback. His identity as someone who solves problems made problems into puzzles rather than obstacles. Your emotional connection to your new self-image must achieve this same intensity. You must feel yourself being successful, not just think about success. You must experience yourself achieving, not just consider achievement. You must emotionally live in your new identity, not just intellectually understand it. This emotional embodiment begins with acting as if your new self-image is already true, not pretending, not faking, but genuinely operating from the identity you're choosing to embrace. If you see yourself as successful, make decisions the way successful people make decisions. If you see yourself as confident, act with the confidence your new identity possesses. If you see yourself as capable of greatness, take actions that someone great would take. Oprah Winfrey understood this principle when she began acting as a successful media personality long before she had achieved success in media. She didn't wait for external validation to embody her vision of herself. She embodied her vision and then attracted the validation. Winfrey's transformation from poverty and abuse to becoming one of the most influential people in the world wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of someone who rewrote her self-image from victim to victor. From limited to limitless, from powerless to powerful. But acting from your new self-image requires courage because it means disappointing the people who preferred your old identity. When you begin operating from an expanded self-image, you'll encounter resistance from those who are comfortable with your limitations, familiar with your struggles, invested in your staying small. This resistance is not personal, it's psychological. People resist change in others because it challenges their own comfort zones, questions their own limitations, and forces them to examine their own self-images. Your transformation becomes a mirror that reflects their potential for transformation, and many people would rather attack the mirror than face the reflection. Your commitment to your new self-image must be stronger than their commitment to your old one. Your belief in who you're becoming must outweigh their insistence on who you've been. Your vision of your potential must override their attachment to your past. This commitment will be tested repeatedly because transformation is rarely smooth or linear. You'll have moments when your old self-image reasserts itself, when circumstances seem to contradict your new identity, when evidence appears to support limitation rather than possibility. These moments are not setbacks, they're opportunities to prove that your new self-image is real rather than superficial, deep rather than shallow, permanent rather than temporary. Anyone can maintain an expanded identity when everything is going perfectly. Only those with genuine transformation can maintain their new self-image when everything seems to be falling apart. The Wright brothers demonstrated this principle when their self-image as aviation pioneers was tested by countless crashes, expert ridicule, and apparent impossibility. Their identity as people who would achieve human flight was stronger than any temporary evidence of failure. They understood that temporary results don't determine permanent identity. Current circumstances don't define future potential. Present challenges don't limit upcoming possibilities. Their self-image as successful inventors was more real to them than their current setbacks. This level of commitment to identity over circumstances is what separates true transformation from temporary change. Temporary change depends on external conditions. True transformation is powered by internal conviction. Your new self-image must become so deeply embedded in your consciousness that it operates automatically, unconsciously, consistently. It must become your default setting rather than your occasional choice. It must be who you are, not just who you're trying to become. This embedding happens through repetition and reinforcement. Every time you think from your new identity, you strengthen its reality. Every time you act from your expanded self-image, you deepen its roots. Every time you make decisions based on who you're becoming rather than who you've been, you accelerate the transformation process. Steve Jobs exemplified this principle when he operated consistently from a self-image as someone who revolutionizes entire industries rather than someone who simply improves existing products. Jobs didn't occasionally think like a revolutionary, he consistently lived, breathed, and acted from that identity. This consistency of self-image enabled Jobs to make decisions that seemed crazy to others, but were perfectly logical from his perspective. The iPhone, the iPad, the transformation of multiple industries, these weren't accidents, but inevitable expressions of someone operating from an identity of revolutionary innovation. But consistency requires vigilance because your old self-image doesn't simply disappear, it fights for survival. It will present compelling evidence for why you should return to familiar limitations. It will remind you of past failures, current challenges, and realistic expectations. It will try to convince you that your new identity is delusional and your old one was accurate. This internal resistance is the final frontier of transformation. External obstacles can be overcome with effort and strategy. Internal resistance requires something deeper, unwavering faith in the identity you're choosing to become. Faith, in this context, isn't blind belief, it's educated confidence based on understanding how identity transformation works. Just as a farmer has faith that seeds will grow into crops, you can have faith that consistently thinking, feeling, and acting from your new self-image will produce corresponding results. Marie Curie demonstrated this faith when she maintained her self-image as a serious scientist, despite overwhelming societal resistance to women in science. Her identity as someone destined to make groundbreaking discoveries was stronger than society's identity of her as someone who should stay in traditional roles. Curie's faith in her scientific identity enabled her to persist through years of rejection, discrimination, and skepticism. She became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize not because she was lucky, but because her self-image as a world-class scientist was unshakable. Your faith in your new self-image must achieve this same level of conviction. You must believe in who you're becoming more than others believe in who you've been. You must trust your vision of your potential more than their evidence of your limitations. You must have more confidence in your future identity than they have in your past performance. This faith is strengthened through evidence, not external evidence, but internal evidence. Every time you successfully think from your new identity, you create evidence of its reality. Every time you act from your expanded self-image, you prove its authenticity. Every time you choose possibility over limitation, you demonstrate its power. Small evidences compound into large convictions. Minor demonstrations of your new identity build confidence for major expressions of it. Tiny acts of faith in who you're becoming develop into unshakable certainty about your potential. John D. Rockefeller built his oil empire not through one massive transformation, but through countless small decisions made from the identity of someone destined to dominate his industry. Each decision, each action, each choice reinforced his self-image as someone capable of extraordinary achievement. Rockefeller's accumulation of identity-confirming evidence eventually made his success inevitable because his self-image left no room for failure. He literally could not imagine himself as unsuccessful because that contradiction, his deeply embedded identity as someone who turns opportunities into empires. Your evidence accumulation begins now with your next thought, your next decision, your next action. Every choice you make either reinforces your old self-image or strengthens your new one. Every moment either confirms your limitations or demonstrates your potential. Every decision either keeps you trapped in familiar patterns or moves you toward transformed possibilities. The beautiful truth about self-image transformation is that it creates its own momentum. The more you operate from your new identity, the more natural it becomes. The more evidence you create of your expanded self-image, the more confident you become in its reality. The more you live from possibility rather than limitation, the more possibilities appear in your life. This momentum eventually reaches a tipping point where your new self-image becomes stronger than your old one, where operating from potential feels more natural than operating from limitation, where seeing yourself as capable of greatness becomes your default perspective rather than your aspirational goal. Ray Kroc reached this tipping point when his self-image as a systematic empire builder became stronger than any external evidence of limitation. At 52 years old, Kroc wasn't young, wasn't wealthy, wasn't highly educated, but his identity as someone who could systematize success was powerful enough to transform McDonald's from a small restaurant into a global phenomenon. Kroc's success wasn't about hamburgers, it was about someone operating from an identity of systematic excellence. His self-image as someone who creates replicable success made franchise expansion inevitable because expansion was simply the natural expression of his internal identity. Your transformation doesn't require perfect circumstances, unlimited resources, or ideal timing. It requires only one thing: the courage to begin operating from the identity you want to embody rather than the identity you've inherited from your past. This beginning can happen at any moment, at any age, in any situation. Self-image transformation is not limited by external factors because it's an internal process. You can start rewriting your character right now, regardless of what has happened before, regardless of what is happening around you, regardless of what others expect from you. The power to transform your self-image is the most democratic power in existence. It doesn't require permission, approval, or external resources. It requires only your decision to stop being limited by who you've been and start being expanded by who you choose to become. But this power comes with responsibility, the responsibility to choose consciously rather than accidentally, purposefully rather than randomly, strategically rather than carelessly. Your self-image is too important to be left to chance, too powerful to be created unconsciously, too influential to be determined by other people's opinions. You must become the intentional architect of your own identity, the conscious creator of your own character, the deliberate designer of your own self-concept. This is not selfishness, it's self-responsibility. This is not vanity, it's vitality. This is not delusion, it's direction. The world needs what your transformed self-image can create. It needs the contributions that only someone operating from expanded identity can make. It needs the innovations that emerge when people refuse to be limited by inherited self-concepts. It needs the breakthroughs that happen when individuals choose possibility over limitation. Your expanded self-image is not just about your personal success, it's about your unique contribution to human progress. When you operate from your highest potential, you inspire others to discover their highest potential. When you transcend your inherited limitations, you give others permission to transcend theirs. When you rewrite your character from limited to limitless, you demonstrate that limitation is optional for everyone. Benjamin Franklin understood this principle when he systematically redesigned his character around virtues he wanted to embody rather than flaws he wanted to eliminate. Franklin didn't try to fix his weaknesses. He created a new identity that naturally expressed strengths. Franklin's methodical approach to self-image transformation made him one of the most accomplished individuals in human history: inventor, diplomat, writer, scientist, philosopher, statesman. His achievements weren't accidents, but inevitable expressions of someone operating from a consciously crafted identity of excellence. Your self-image transformation can achieve this same level of systematic intentionality. Instead of randomly hoping for change, you can strategically create change. Instead of accidentally evolving, you can deliberately transform. Instead of hoping circumstances will improve your identity, you can use your identity to improve your circumstances. This transformation begins with a simple but profound question: who do I need to become to create the life I truly want? Not what do I need to do, not what do I need to have, but who do I need to become? Because being precedes doing. Identity determines action, and character creates circumstances. When you answer this question honestly and specifically, you begin to see the gap between your current self-image and your required self-image. This gap is not a problem, it's a possibility. It's not a limitation, it's a liberation. It's not evidence of inadequacy, it's a roadmap for transformation. Bridging this gap requires what Napoleon Hill called definite purpose. Not just knowing what you want, but knowing who you need to become to achieve what you want. Your purpose must include identity transformation, not just goal achievement. Your vision must encompass character development, not just circumstance improvement. Sam Walton built Walmart not just by knowing what he wanted to achieve, but by becoming someone capable of achieving it. Walton transformed his self-image from small-town retailer to retail revolutionary. His success followed his identity transformation, not the other way around. Walton's methodical approach to becoming someone worthy of extraordinary success made that success inevitable. He didn't just want to build a retail empire, he became someone who naturally builds retail empires. The external achievement was simply the visible expression of invisible identity transformation. Your achievements will follow this same pattern. When you become someone worthy of success, success becomes inevitable. When you develop the identity of someone who naturally attracts opportunities, opportunities become abundant. When you embody the character of someone destined for greatness, greatness becomes your natural destination. But becoming requires time, patience, and persistence. Identity transformation is not instant gratification, it's delayed gratification that compounds into extraordinary satisfaction. Quick fixes create temporary results. Deep transformation creates permanent change. Your old self-image was years in the making. Your new self-image will also take time to solidify. But unlike your old identity, which was largely unconscious and accidental, your new identity is conscious and intentional. This makes the transformation process faster and more powerful than the original programming. You're not starting from scratch, you're upgrading existing software. You're not building from nothing, you're remodeling an existing structure. You're not creating a completely new person, you're unleashing the potential that was always there but temporarily hidden by limiting programming. This potential has been waiting your entire life for you to recognize it, claim it, and express it. It's been patient while you explored limitation, understanding while you experimented with mediocrity, ready while you were learning what doesn't work. But potential without expression is just wishful thinking. Capability without action is just comfortable delusion. Possibility without pursuit is just pleasant daydreaming. Your time for exploration is over. Your season of experimentation is complete. Your period of preparation is finished. The moment has arrived to stop wondering about your potential and start expressing it, to stop thinking about transformation and start embodying it, to stop considering possibilities and start creating realities. The script of your life is not written in permanent ink, it's written in pencil, and you hold the eraser. Every page can be rewritten. Every chapter can be improved. Every character can be transformed. The story can change direction at any moment you choose to pick up the pen and start writing from a new identity. Your self-image is your destiny because it determines every choice you make, every action you take, every opportunity you recognize or miss. Change your self-image, and you change your destiny. Transform your identity, and you transform your future. Rewrite your character, and you rewrite your life. The power is in your hands. The choice is before you. The moment is now. Stop living from the self-image you inherited from your past. Start living from the self-image you're creating for your future. Stop being limited by who you've been. Start being expanded by who you're becoming. Your destiny is not fixed by your history. It's created by your identity. And your identity is not permanent programming. It's changeable code that you can rewrite anytime you choose. Choose now. Choose powerfully. Choose the self-image worthy of the life you truly want to create. Rewrite your character from limited to limitless, from struggling to succeeding, from surviving to thriving. Your new story begins with your new identity. And your new identity begins with your decision to stop accepting limitation and start embracing possibility. The pen is in your hand, the page is blank, the possibilities are endless. Write the character you want to become, then live into that character until it becomes your reality. Your self-image is your destiny. Rewrite it today. If this message has awakened the author within you, if you've felt the stirring of possibility in your consciousness, if you've glimpsed the power to rewrite your own story, then you're ready to join a community of individuals who understand that transformation begins with identity. Follow this channel for more insights into the psychology of success, the philosophy of achievement, and the practical steps to transform your self-image into your greatest asset. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been trapped by an inherited identity, someone who's ready to rewrite their character, someone who's prepared to become the author of their own destiny. Take a moment right now to examine your current self-image. How do you see yourself? What story have you been telling yourself about your capabilities? What character have you been playing in the drama of your own life? Your honest answers will reveal exactly why your life looks the way it does and exactly what needs to be rewritten to create the future you truly want. Remember, you are not your past. You are not your circumstances. You are not other people's opinions. You are the character you choose to become. And that choice is available to you right now, in this moment, regardless of what has happened before. Your self-image is your destiny. Choose it wisely, write it boldly, live it powerfully.